There we go. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. We're live now from Tel Aviv. My name is Ed Frank, and I'm the CEO of Access Innovation, and it's really great that you can join us. Since COVID, we've also moved over to digital, and this is our 27th webinar since we started this whole pandemic, and we're all hoping that the world will go back to normal. We're not there yet, and we're hoping that it will happen soon. And I think that, it's good that we're able to get everybody together, and we'll try to do the best we can to make this a very productive hour for you guys. So just wanted to first, before we begin, thank our partners, Mobidev, who are joining us from Eastern Europe. And we have also really a very distinguished panel today. Joining us from the UK, Jonathan Tudor, who I know for many years. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. Sherry Lee from Silicon Valley, who's joining us. Ludmila Taranenko, also from Mobidev from Ukraine, and Alexandra Iliskaya, also from Ukraine. And in a few minutes, we'll have another distinguished guest, Gayatri Radhakrishnan, who's the head of AI investments at Micron Technologies, based in Silicon Valley as well. So the subject today is the future of business and what kind of value does AI bring to startups. So we have a very interesting perspective. The audience today, actually, we have people joining from 27 countries, which is really exciting. About half of those are startups and the other half are corporations, investors, and people interested in AI. So just wanted to, for a minute, talk about the work that we do at Access Innovation. We connect startups with corporations and investors. We have a number of corporate clients working with us for many years, such as Ford, Visa, and Kimberly-Clark, and a few others. And we actually are based in Israel, but we work with startups that are based in other countries as well. We also work with startups on their funding rounds and always try to bring a perspective of an investor, such as in this case, Jonathan, as well as corporations such as GE and Micron. So thank you all for joining us today, and wanted to also go over the agenda for a moment. We're going to open with a short presentation by Ludmila on the value of problems and value of AI in business, followed by a roundtable where you're getting a chance to hear from our guests from around the world. And then we'll be having a presentation by Alexandra, and then we'll be going to Q&A. So please feel free to reach out to our panelists or us over the Q&A. We want this to be as interactive as possible. Hope you enjoy the session today. And now I'm going to turn this over to Ludmila. Thank you, Ludmila, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. Such a great intro. So I'm sharing my screen, and let me know if it's okay, and we will start. Okay, so today I would like to talk about the AI, artificial intelligence for different businesses, however, also focus on some particular business case. So first of all, I would like to actually start with a few words about myself. So I graduated from Applied Mathematics and Applied Economics department. Then I started work as a data analyst. And now actually the most part of my working life is Mobidev. Here I work as the data scientist, and we have a huge team from passionate data scientists who work on the different business tasks, enormous types of different tasks. So, for example, computer vision and natural language processing, classic machine learning, statistical analysis, and so on. And also in terms of my interests, so I like listening podcasts, going for sport, and travel as much as I can. So in terms of the agenda for my presentation in particular, so I would like to introduce your one business problem and business model, then show the vision of the value and the solution for this particular business problem, a few tips about the pandemic influence, and some highlights. So let's get started. And I would like to pay your attention that any business, any successful business, and it doesn't matter it's an AI project or the software development, whatever, each time you need to solve the customer problems. So it's the axiom for any successful business. So you start with this business problem, the customer problem, come up with appropriate data, and then you can reach this solution. And today I would like to talk about the particular business model. It's the model for the retails and restaurants. And the need here is to know what customers like, what their inner passion, what they really like of our business, of our products, what they purchase, what their interests are, and improve the business based on these customer needs. And actually, we started as with the software application, which can help us to test the idea, to grab our customers around this software development, and actually help us to collect the data. The data here is the events and transaction purchases and all this data around the products and sales. And when we collect this transaction, these events, it's of course it's often visible, so we can go deeper with database. We can see these rows actually. However, inside these events, inside these transactions, we have some hidden, interesting things, and it can be some patterns, and we can convert these patterns into structures and actually come up with the models which help us to automate the decision-making process, which help us to come up with different insightful ideas about our business, actually. And moving on to the problem itself. So first of all, we need to analyze the historical sales, and based on these historical sales and findings here, predict the future sales. And on top of that, find some hidden gems, hidden patterns based on their historical sales analysis. And to talk a little bit about the value of all these data manipulations. So we have here two dimensions, is the value and the difficulty. And as you can see on this simple chart, so we have, first of all, the descriptive analytics, it's hindsight. So we answer the question, what happened in previous time? So the next point and more interesting is insights, and it's predictive analytics. And we answer the question, what will happen? So it's our predictions. And the third level of the difficulty, however, and of the value. We can answer the question, how to make it happen. So which scenarios we need to apply here in different situations. And in terms of our particular case, so we, as I said, we processed the historical data, actually existing data, and come up with the models. These models were validated based on the accuracy. So if the accuracy is not satisfiable, so we are not happy with these results, we reiterate one more time the modeling stage. Here, as you can see also on this diagram on the right side, so we have two different options. It's time series analysis and machine learning algorithm gradient boosting. And then when the model is stable and the results really shows the enough accuracy, we go with integration and come up with dashboard and functionality. Also, I would like to add here a little tech side, because we have here two options when we got the data. we proceed in two different ways, with small data and big data, because it's also two directions for the artificial intelligence. So here we have the Pandas framework, which help us to process the small amount of data, and we have PySpark for the big data processing, and then everything in the same way stored into the database, Cassandra database. And based on the insights which we found, we show the results for the end user, for the business owner, for the business guy who can process this information further. Also, the really vital thing, and I would like to pay your attention a lot on the productization. So, for me, it's the most difficult part of the whole process, because previously we talked about, some lab experiments. However, productization is something real that's supposed to work on the real data, on the real usage. And here we have a lot of different businesses, different restaurants, chains. So the input data is really different. And we need to process each of these unique components, each of these edge cases, and be sure that we have the stable environment, so that this data processed properly, that the results are reliable, and we can just rely on these results and be sure that nothing will be failed. So productization is very vital. Keep in mind that you need to be very careful with that. And here I add some part of the whole dashboard. So it's our system, which shows the historical data, which shows the predictions and some insights. However, on top of that, we also add the staff analysis to the this dashboard, this modeling, because we collected also the information about the employees. So it's tips, their contribution, their performance, and also with that in mind, we can also provide the anomaly detection and actually analyze the individual some even maybe ratings based on their performance, step performance. And also based on the, again, existing data, we are able to analyze our customers. And on this chart, I put just one portion of the insights. So what exactly I meant here. So on the left corner, we have these hidden gems, and this products is really interesting for us because they are not often sold. However, people really return and buy them a lot, and they are interesting for the our return customers. And for example, on this left corner, we have the best hits. So we exactly know that this product is so popular and people return always. So it's our just best hits. However, also we have the quadrant with some maybe under-promoted items, or with some items which are really not worth selling in our store or restaurant. So a business guy can just pay attention to this classification and make some decisions. Actually, of course, we faced this problem with the pandemic, the data. Just as you can see on the right side, on the bottom, data just stopped. Everything stopped, and we needed to come up with another model. So actually, I can say that I don't have the silver bullet which will predict, this situation. That's why we need to come up with new models, with new ideas. And I put on this slide several tips which can help you to improve the models based on the new reality. And as far as we are concerned, so we reconsider our models in terms of short-term perspective. Also, we come up with additional feature engineering in order to improve the model accuracy. And of course, we just collect a new data and more fresh data with new reality. And actually, to put it simply, I put here several highlights. And again, the successful business is that solve the customer problems. And if you have your customers, please live with them, keep them in mind what they like, what they really need, and then you will also be successful. Keep in mind that data is super vital, and data store a lot of information, and you can extract this information and give some light on some previously unknown factors. And the last thing is automation. So again, try to process everything. Be sure that you covered each case, and you don't need to do some things manually. So actually, that's all from my side. So I would be happy to hear your questions, and so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ludmila. It was great to hear the data scientist view of AI instead of the business case, but now we're moving over to the next section where we'll actually have a chance to hear from some of the businesses and how they work with AI, what make them decisions to invest as well. So first, I'd like to ask our panelists to please introduce yourself. So I'd like to start, Sherry, thank you very much for joining us. I know it's early in the morning in California, so thank you for being with us. So maybe you can give a little background on yourself and your connection with AI.
Thank you, Ed. Really a pleasure to join today's panel. So I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area, like Ed mentioned. I'm in the transition to into a new job. So I used to kind of lead the strategy and operations for our software engineering team in GE Digital. I'm actually moving into a global product leader role. Really looking at kind of the cross portfolio for our GE Digital Grid Software Solutions product. What AI means to us is it's really at the core of how we deliver value to our customers. We heard in the last presentation, there's tons of information in data. So what we really do is looking at how do we leverage these data and then really help our customers improve their operational efficiency, save cost, and then really deliver more value to their customers. So pleasure to be here, and look forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you very much, Sherry. And now I'd like to ask Gayatri to give a little background on the work that she does in Micron, and also you're in charge of the AI fund, so it's super relevant. And also joining us from Silicon Valley. And again, thanks for waking up so early.
Thanks for the invitation, Ed. Pleasure to be here. So at Micron, we actually have a $100 million AI fund, which we launched in 2018. More news on the fund side will be announced later this year, so please keep an eye out. We actively invest in startups that are applying AI both on from an application standpoint, so AI applied in verticals like manufacturing, automotive, healthcare, even agriculture. And we also look or invest in startups that are what we call core AI, so enabling technologies that enable the adoption and acceleration of AI and machine learning. This could be AI accelerated chips. This could be software like MLOps and others. So we are very excited because this is there's a lot of activity happening. There's a lot of noise, but there's also a lot of interesting breakthroughs happening in this space. So we're excited to be a participant in this. We typically invest in companies in the Series A and Series B kind of stage. That's our sweet spot. We actually invest in US, Europe, and Israel. And pre-COVID, I used to be in Israel every quarter. So looking forward to resuming my trips back to Israel. So
Right, well,
thanks again for having me
great.
here.
Thank you so much, Gerati. And Alexandra, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Ed. My name is Alexandra, and I'm the head of Business and Technical Analysis Department here at Mobidev. And my daily operation is usually built around the negotiations with our new and existing clients. Together with our R&D experts, we try to define what business goal this specific client has, what software piece we would like to build together, and definitely to brainstorm together how exactly it can be achieved by means of the software development process to deliver some specific software application. And what I can say that indeed recently, I mean, during the last like 2 or 3 years, the most of the ideas and concepts, they actually combine the development of the typical software, some mobile application, for instance, and artificial intelligence. Or we also have some requests related to augmented reality or Internet of Things. So basically, most of them is about innovation. And that's what we usually do with our technical experts. And my dearest colleague is from the R&D department.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Alexandra. Now, Jonathan, I'd like to ask you to please introduce yourself and give a little bit of background on the work that you're doing, and also, of course, your previous experiences as it really touches a lot of the industries that we're talking about.
Sure, Ed. Hi, everybody. So I'm Jonathan Tudor. I'm the partner at a climate early stage investment fund here in the UK. We do late stage seed, Series A. We'll touch anything which, as a business, will reduce carbon as part of climate transition. I think prior to that in my career, I've kind of been in and out of AI to some extent, but at some points we call that search. I think Google at some point even called search artificial intelligence. We used to call it mathematical application of hidden Markov models to Bayesian statistics when it was speech recognition in the business I held. And then when I was at BP, I think we started to talk more formally about artificial intelligence, machine learning, when oil rigs and the data that at one point the oil sector produced more data than Google did in 24 hours. And this is going back maybe 10 years or so. So the application understanding data in real time and making safety decisions, process decisions was paramount to that. So happy to be here today.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And Ludmila, we heard from you. Is there anything you wanted to just introduce yourself that you already didn't talk about? Or...
so actually, I would like to add that such great people gathered today here, and also really interested in all these technologies. And for now, the task also for us, it's a challenge for us to have the really great models, however, in very high speed, in order to manage all requests from the users and don't be very slow. So it's the new task for us as the artificial intelligence guys.
Great, thank you. Sherry, I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, obviously GE has conglomerate involved in finance, in manufacturing, in many different industries. Maybe you can give us a few examples of AI from your experience as to certain areas where you think AI is becoming so critical for GE and for your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ed, like you mentioned, GE has quite a lot of businesses. So my business is really the GE Digital, which is kind of the digital portfolio, digital piece of the GE overall portfolio. So the customers that we serve is really power utilities, power plants, generators, as well as manufacturing, and then also the grid operators, for distribution and transmission. So one of the example, that I would say, kind of for our normal consumers who really just use the electricity and we kind of, we switch we turn the switch and we expect the light to be, to be on and, get the electricity. What we don't realize is actually there is a very complex power system behind how the electricity is delivered to, from the generation point to the, the consumption point. And especially with the push to renewables, I think every country in the world right now probably are looking at a target to, let's say, reach certain amount of renewable resource generation by certain year, right? For example, we want to reach 50% renewable energy generation by 2030 or 2050, or to 100%. So with that push going on, and especially for consumers, for example, a lot of us are probably considering solar panel on our rooftop, or have seen ads, like that. So really coupled with the storage that we can get in our house, we're really reaching to a level where we are not only contributing to the grid energy generation, but also getting certain amount of kind of energy independence and cost saving. So with all of that push, I would say the landscape is really changing, for the utility industry. And then that really adds a lot of complexity and challenge to the power system, because the renewable generation, they're intermittent, right? So there are a lot of challenges that the whole power system will have to conquer when the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing. So with that, really I would say, kind of the AI and from the data point, there are tons of applications that we have developed and also we're looking at. So for example, on the kind of the generation side, one of the things for our application is really using AI to predict the inertia that's needed, and that will be provided inside of the whole power system, which will help the whole system really provide reliability, power, and better balance the supply and demand. And then also, on the generation side, inside of the power plant, there's this power, this gas engine, for example, that's running, and our data really will help. Our analysis will really help the power plants better predict when is a better time to to do maintenance on the gas turbine. And then I would say, other things that's really interesting that we're also looking at is really on the demand side as well. How can we use AI to better predict all of the behaviors for the consumers and even the prosumers, which means that people has the solar panel on their rooftop, so they're actually let's say exporting electricity from their house and not just consuming the electricity in the at the consumption point. So how can we better predict the behaviors on the demand side so that we can give better signals to the utilities, because really at the core of their job is to balance the demand and supply. So how can we really predict the kind of the demand side is also a very interesting piece that that could be a very good application for AI as well. So maybe just that's a couple of examples from my perspective.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Actually had a discussion with another company last week, also dealing with the power and how there's thousands of miles of data points that need to be analyzed to make the power plant reach from the plant until the consumer. And the inspection, the visual inspection is quite a job. And now using drones, using predictive maintenance, and basically in a few hours, this company was able to actually analyze where the outages were there anomalies that were coming. And also on that supply side, looking at really where, where they could improve the benefits to their customers. So it's really covers so many areas. Jonathan, I just would like to ask you as well. Obviously, clean energy is quite important to your business, and I think that what Sherry was talking about also is quite relevant. I'd like to hear a little bit about you and how you think that supply and the consistent demand, how that's important to you and any AI companies that you've seen that have been in that space.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you probably couldn't see, but I was nodding violently as Sherry was speaking, right? Because one of the big themes we work on from an investment point of view, Sherry points out, is the the consequence of more renewable energy coming onto the grid is that it's only there when the weather allows it, right? So balancing supply and demand on the grid becomes more difficult. So that she made the case for kind of storage. As you drill down and peel the onion layers back on what's happening in our worlds as we consume energy, we started to focus inside the home, right? If you look at Northern Europe, where we spend more of our energy on heating, right? The average home in the UK will emit two tons of carbon dioxide every year just from heating. Wow. It's going to be the same in relatively in Israel, but it's probably from air conditioning, the amount of energy you consume, right? So we don't directly see AI companies per se establish themselves to solve that. We see hardware companies who use software in conjunction with their hardware to optimize that. So we've seen a company that makes a super intelligent hot water tank, right? It learns from the behavior of the home that on Tuesday night must be bath night because we get through liters of hot water. Wednesday, we don't use very much. So it kind of learns how much hot water do I need to get ready by and by when. But it also then understands at the network level, when is energy the cheapest and when is energy most abundant? So if it's 3 a.m. and the wind's blowing heavily in the North Sea, for example, there's huge amounts of wind power, which at the moment, bizarrely, some of the operators are having to pay the wind operators to turn off wind turbines because there's nowhere to put that power. There's not enough storage. So if you can distribute it in the way that it can be individual homes, that you can put that power into a hot water tank at 3 a.m. and get paid for it or subsidize the cost of your personal energy, there's a drive for consumers to start adopting the hot water tank. They don't really understand that there's AI driving intelligence at the system level behind it. But that same approach we're seeing across the replacement of a gas boiler for heating, for example, to a full electric system, right? And electricity is more expensive because you've got to generate it, you've got to transmit it, you've got to distribute it. So all those players in that stack have got to make margin. So it can be twice, 2, 3, 5 times more expensive than gas. So then likewise, a boiler can say, I know what the weather's going to be like in the next 24 hours. I know how long it takes to heat up the home. I've learned that, and I've learned that on a Wednesday, everybody's home and everyone's going to be warm, but Thursday, nobody's home. So even if you set me to come on, I'm not going to come on. So that there's this kind of reinforcement learning of AI that we're starting to see to creep in, just at that kind of distributed level that Sherry saw. The other one where we're looking at a couple of live deals kind of now is where if you look at big industries which are going to be very, very difficult to decarbonize, cement manufacture, glass manufacture, for example, right? A lot of what they do is moving big, heavy bits of sand or material around conveyor belts. This is old tech, but it needs to be optimized. So if you can plug into the SCADA data that kind of exists there and apply machine learning approaches to that, to then optimize the movement of stuff around a production plant, you'd be amazed how much energy that consumes. If you save energy, you can save carbon, you can do that. So we're starting to see it touch a lot of places, but it won't necessarily be marketed as an AI company. It'll be a company that's identified an important problem that needs to be solved, and they're using software and AI as part of their whole value proposition.
Great, that's really interesting. I wanted to ask the members of the audience and the startups out there, maybe you can put on the chat some of the industries that you're trying to solve problems with, and again, some of the problems that your customers have. So we're going to have a chance to do Q&A, but I think, Jonathan, that was a really good segue into Gayatri, who basically, we had the discussion, Micron is a chip company, which is hardware, but very much focused on looking at software. So maybe you could give us a little bit of background on how Micron is managing those and why AI is so important to a hardware company.
Absolutely. I think when we talk about AI, the general perception is around the value of compute or the importance of compute and accelerating the compute portion for AI workloads. But one of the things that we have realized is that for specific models, especially if you're thinking about deep neural network models, what happens is basically it's a matrix multiply accumulate, right? So you're constantly fetching data, then multiplying them with the weights, adding them, putting them back. And as you go through the layers, this process gets repeated over and over again. So what the common theme here is essentially data that's getting fetched from the weights, and then the data that's getting stored after the calculations are done. And we find that most of the AI problems are actually heavily bandwidth limited in their ability to access the memory and storage, specifically memory. And that when you look at a lot of the AI accelerator companies, you will see large blocks of memory on the AI accelerator chip itself. And this is to essentially prevent that constant data movement, because that's what's driving latency in a lot of the cases as well. So there is a big need for high bandwidth memory and so on for AI workloads. And that's why for us, looking at this sort of market has a direct context to what we do and potentially the future sort of needs. And the current architecture, computer architecture, the way it's set up is not conducive for this kind of constant addition and fetching. And so not just addition, right? Compute. And that's where we're looking at the various verticals to understand the workloads. We're trying to understand, okay, how does that impact, the architecture itself? How can companies think about accelerating the speed? Because the whole notion is to get to results faster. If you look at sort of AI, it's about prediction. It's about, in certain cases, even real time, right? We talked about energy utilization. So knowing what's going to happen on a Wednesday, or I think that was the day Jonathan said there was a lot of water usage, right? So knowing that on Wednesday and not like on Tuesday, right? Being able to do it in real time. So ability to speed things up and make it happen at the time when you need it. I think memory and storage plays a big role, and that's why we're looking at these technologies. In terms of specific to software, the importance of software is that a lot of innovation is happening at a hardware level, but the applications which are built with software need to understand the capability of the underlying hardware and be able to leverage that. So, so software, or specifically even firmware, becomes kind of the translation layer between the applications and the hardware. So we're looking at sort of that end-to-end spectrum to say, okay, even if there's hardware innovation, you talk to any AI accelerator company, for instance, they'll say that 50% of their sort of workforce is almost focused on software and another 50% on hardware, even though at the heart of it, it's a hardware problem that they're trying to solve, because they're trying to create that awareness in the ecosystem of how their solution can be leveraged or used. So that's why we look at it more holistically from a venture standpoint. We look at hardware solutions. We also look at software and how it enables the underlying hardware to operate.
Great, thank you. Alexandra, I'd like to hear your thoughts on really that software hardware issue. As you're obviously a software company, but I think that you have that perspective as to what the limitations are in the hardware. As Gayatri mentioned about the latency and the memory and the chip power.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's a very interesting topic, because despite the fact that Mobidev is focused on the software part, it's always important to think about the end product to deliver to the end customer. And definitely, if we talk about software plus hardware, we need to also think about at least firmware, communication bridge between software and hardware, and at least, for instance, analyze the specification for the hardware to understand the protocol, how they're going to communicate in future. Based on my experience, you're right, we don't have a lot of projects like that, and we always try to start the extensive requirements analysis, understanding and knowing what hardware we are talking about. However, in some cases, it's really important to, again, brainstorm together and try to understand if it's really some universal solution. For instance, I had a case recently when we talked about the company worked with boilers maintenance and support. And that's also a great combination for software, hardware, artificial intelligence for predictive maintenance, and therefore having some offline office of the business to actually perform the offline activities to support their end clients. And what we did, we tried to like put on the table all the ideas, even about hardware, and discuss everything in corporate, because it's always a matter of integration of AI inside software or hardware. So that's the essential part of the development process usually.
Okay, thank you, Alexandra. And Sherry, now that you're moving clearly to the software side and the digital side, how do you marry that software and hardware issue?
Yeah, I think I think one of the questions too that I think somebody asked the panelists too, is kind of how important is data wrangling to get the data ready for the AI. I think that's one piece of the kind of the puzzle there, which is how do you really get the right data, knowing what is the right data to get and what is the architecture to really get that data. And I think from the hardware perspective, we really think of hardware as the kind of the all of the sensors out there, right? They're like the if the AI application is a human, they're the hands and they're all of the five senses there. So it's very important to get the hardware designed in the right way, and so that they can really get the data that we need, and then also I would say at the right structure, and then at the right time interval as well. So I think really some of these hardware, I think Jonathan mentioned as well, we are seeing hardware companies really tackling the problem from a hardware perspective and then getting into the software. That's definitely one of the angles that that we are seeing some of the major players can play out there, and that is definitely one of the trends that I think all of us should be watching.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, I just wanted to ask you, obviously, AI can't do everything, and one of the things that it can do is lower the carbon, as you mentioned. Wanted to know, maybe you can give us some of your ideas. What areas do you think AI is not able to attack, or maybe that would be the holy grail of a solution that could bring really some innovation?
Yeah, I think you're right, Ed. I mean, there's certain sectors that are going to be difficult. I mean, if you look at, for example, cosmetics industry, the home care, detergents, the chemicals kind of sector, yeah, you can use AI to design biotechnology drugs, active ingredients, but some of those base chemicals which go in detergents, for example, right? They're well-known, very commodity products, low margin, high volume. The chemistry is known, but they're based off petroleum, right? They still drive the demand for exploration and production and the production of oil out of assets, right? I'm not yet convinced AI can play a role in how do you move to a more sustainable source of that? How do you go to a renewable bio plant-based extraction of an oil and then use fermentation approaches to do something? It's redesigning known processes, which are big buckets, stirrers, separations, right? It's remote, so remote from software. I think that would be a challenge, but would love to see somebody come up with a great idea.
Thank you very much, Gayatri. You're obviously a hardware company, and as you said, 50% of your efforts are now in the software. So what do you see as AI not being able to attack?
I think there's a good question about data wrangling, right? So I think there is the famous chart that if you can Google, I think you'll find it. It basically talks about the AI being a really small part, everything that happens around it, right? Pre-processing of the data labeling, the training, all of that, and then the AI is just this really small segment. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen. So to the earlier question, I think data wrangling and getting data ready is super important. And also, for instance, in our manufacturing floor, we have different machines. Data is being generated at different times by each of these machines, correlating the time at which each of the data is spitting out that specific piece of information, and making sure that you're drawing the right conclusions, right? So there's a lot of data preparation work that needs to happen. So that's something that's definitely important, right? And in terms of what can it not achieve, I think the current set of AI models, for all it's worth, it's garbage in, garbage out. So training and how the data, the breadth of the data, the training data it becomes super important. There's a lot of talk around bias and so on. So again, making sure that your data set is truly representative, all of that is important because the output that comes from the AI models depends on the input that's being fed to these models. So there's some innovations happening there in terms of transfer learning and in terms of, sort of being able to learn on the fly, just like humans do. But those are still a little time off. It's happening, but in terms of mass adoption and when the technology will be ready, we still need to look through that. So I think there are areas where it's the application is real and can be seen today. And then there are areas where I think it's more future bound. We'll have to wait for the technology to evolve.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I want to move now to the next section and have Alexandra give us a little bit of background on the industries that are being affected by AI. I know that we talked about retail, fintech, and healthcare, a little bit less about energy, and you'll have a chance to continue your questions on the chat. And then after Alexandra's presentation, we'll have time for a few more questions. So Alexandra, and thank you for your presentation, and looking forward to hearing a little bit more about how to integrate AI in business.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much. And yes, my presentation has the same topic as Ludmila's. However, today I would like to outline this topic more from the business perspective and discuss those starters. And our participants ask about that actual like planning, how to start the whole process. And that's what actually I would like to talk to you about today. And please feel free to ask questions. We have a lot of interesting right now. So I will try to gradually answer all of them. So if we talk about, just a second. Yeah, so if we talk about me and my personal like attitude to AI, I really believe that it's something that, like can bring the new life into any software piece. And I really believe that it's a true innovation which can bring the real additional value to the end customer. And it's great that everybody agrees that data is something that we should start with. And how I see it, if we talk about the project which consists of software and AI, artificial intelligence component, data is the similar requirement like anything else, like design assets, like user stories, like written specifications. So for me, data is really super important, and it's something that we should start the analysis with. And yes, of course, we usually work with data that we have at handy. So we start with the question, what data sample do you have right now? What data sample you can share with us for the analysis? And then our engineers team tries to investigate and find some like blind spots and maybe to ask more samples. And maybe in a couple of weeks, we will gather the sufficient input in the format of data. The other thing that I think about AI is that, of course, artificial intelligence is really innovative. And from the development perspective, it should be, it has the creative nature of the development process, and agile is more appropriate for it, of course. At the same time, I think that we always should think about business and business value. So when we work with our clients, we usually try to also determine what exact delivery we would like to receive in a week or in 4 weeks or in 6 months. So it's also a matter of planning what exactly artificial intelligence insights we can actually receive in the end, not just, like analyzing the data. We need to see the result. And also, I think that any project should be estimated and evaluated from the like determining the actual balance between investment and benefit, because based on my experience, AI project is really consistent, and it never ends actually, because we can provide any sort of improvement like throughout the years. However, it's always important to understand and to evaluate what results we have and how we can actually help assist the business to make some decisions, to make optimization of the business flow. So yes, I'm also a fan of AI, and I think that data is really important. Another slide about data is mostly about what to start with. So to my mind, if we talk about any business, I think so, There are some like storages of data already. There is some information. Maybe it's not really like secure, maybe it's not that structured, but still it's really important to think about the whole data collection process and maybe to adapt some business processes to start collecting it in a proper way. The next step is to, to not think that we can actually measure everything and we need to do this right away in a week or so. So it's always important to prioritize the KPIs, the metrics, and try to understand how the specific data correlates to this metric. So do we really need this information? Do we really want to collect it and put some efforts in it? Then when we identified what exactly scope of data we would like to collect, we need to think about the structure of this data. And here it's really important to think about it from the development perspective, because data will then be stored somewhere on the backend on the server side. So we need to understand, are there any requirements to store the data, and what's important to make this process secure. And also, I faced a couple of cases where we try to understand, so what does this data give to our client's management team? So what exactly they can actually receive as the result? And sometimes even our clients cannot, precisely answer this question because they just want to receive some advice. However, it's always a matter of understanding this data from the business perspective. And of course, only our client's team, only client's board can actually understand the data and make some specific conclusions. So what we can do, we can visualize the data and let our clients explore the result. Yeah, and if we talk about my personal experience, this slide is a little bit, funny to me, and we have that phrase like, it's really limited. So to my mind, my personal experience is about mostly retail, fintech, and healthcare. And we have a lot of projects and concepts that we discuss with our R&D technical experts. However, I really believe that it's limitless in terms of domains where we can apply artificial intelligence. And yeah, I think it's a little bit pretentious, but I really think so. And that is exactly why we are not focused on some specific domains. We always start negotiations, not depending on what exactly idea we're talking about. If it's fantastic or if it's practicable, we start that communication and come up with some practicable insight about it. Now I would like to share just several words on the specific groups of ideas that, again, based on our experience we gathered so far. And I would say that for retail, and Ludmila told a lot about those projects and ideas about demand forecasting. And I think it's really popular nowadays. And there are a lot of already existing solutions at the market. For me personally, like voice commerce drags my attention, because I think that I'm not a fan, honestly, of Alexa type of solutions. However, I felt the real, value of this solution when the pandemic era started. Because honestly, like voice commerce is about reduce the dependence on the hardware. And that's some high level thought about everything in our life today. So I think that voice commerce for retail has the biggest potential right now. Yeah. If we talk about fintech, which is my, I would say, favorite domain, I think that the most, again, popular and actual type of projects and ideas we discuss usually is about make the personalized advice for customers. Because again, a lot of people start, avoiding some specific social locations and physical buildings, banks also. And it seems to me that having the personal advice in the real time, what we discussed today, and in the remote mode is a very convenient way of customers to talk to their banking institutions. And I read an interesting statement several days ago. It's the future of advice isn't dominated by robots. So it's a very open matter to me. And I think that, yes, some personalized financial advice can be actually provided only by the machine, by the engine. However, of course, it's so, tricky question sometimes, like personal finance, that I'm pretty sure that, of course, we will need to go to banks from time to time and talk to our banking representatives. However, I think that most of these activities, they can be actually implemented by means of some software products. And healthcare, that's also one of my favorite domains, and I would say the most complicated from the development point of view, because HIPAA compliance, GDPR, etc., everything brings the new type of requirements to such projects. And also I tried to list the most popular ideas that I personally talk to with our clients. And I think that the most important and having the biggest social impact is the type of idea about the disease screening and diagnosis. And what's even more important, I had recently some really relevant case where it was not about only screening and providing some also personalized advice, however, also to combine this with the external advice from some specific medical network of clinics. So for instance, if we define some sort of diagnosis, we can actually recommend this person to go and to make some surgery. And I think that's the combination we also discussed today. So it's not only about like software and some specific user scenario, it's about really important aspects of life, and I would say the full cycle of such aspects. So I think that I really think that healthcare receives a lot from AI today, and it attacks in a very positive way right now. Also, I wanted to just show one high-level screen how we think the whole development process should build. So as you can see, we have some specific steps, and they are very important, and such consequence is, to my mind, really feasible. And also I tried to provide the comparison between the flow for new business, if we do not have anything right now, or for business which is already built, established, and for instance, there is already some software. So it's important to mention that, of course, the main thing is to think about the whole idea, to have some strategic planning, how the software corresponds to the data available, should it be connected to some hardware, so to understand the high-level diagram of the project. Definitely, like we discussed, it's important to think about data and how this idea with the expected result relates to such data. Do we have enough sufficient data to reach the desired result? And of course, for new business, to my mind, it's a little bit more like easier way, because data, small data or no data at this point of time, so we can easily work with some public data sets, for instance. So we have some alternatives. Development, as you can see, it's quite standard for me for both cases. And I think that definitely we need to understand the strategic roadmap, for instance, for 18 months, and to understand what we should start with. And we usually call it proof of concept or minimum viable product. Again, like Ludmila mentioned, it's a matter of one specific idea or hypothesis and scoping this smaller project, this smaller part of project for this specific hypothesis check and validation. And I think that what's really important, and sometimes it's being like omit, is getting the feedback. So development itself and data itself cannot provide actionable insights. It's just something that then a person, the manager, who's responsible for the process, can actually take this data, take a look, explore, investigate, and provide some specific business initiatives to change some process, to optimize something, maybe to, I don't know, to make some automation for the specific process. So feedback from the actual users is really essential, and I would say that it should end each development part and development cycle. Yeah, and I would like to also, reiterate the idea from Ludmila's presentation, that the strict reference is that like software is initial step, and from the development perspective, proof of concept is initial step. So software, it can be like 100 features list. So my main suggestion would be to definitely narrow down the first efforts and to finalize the priorities first, to understand what is that like major idea and thing you would like to check, and then build the first version of the product, proof of concept, around this idea. And then like step by step, maybe again in a year or maybe in 2 years, you will have the powerful solution. And to my mind, such iterative approach allows to actually receive the real results and be flexible with the planning. And of course, as always, we're talking about data. So data collection is really important for any custom modeling. And to my mind, even if we just go, again, if just little data, it's really better than no data. So software is capable to gather data. Let's start with the proof of concept. And yeah, I really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for attention. I'm always open for discussion to talk about any technological topic.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Alexandra. And just wanted to go back to our panelists for one last round of questions. Of course, you're welcome to ask questions. You can post them on. We have Tess from the UK has been very active in asking questions, but wanted to just ask our panelists, Gayatri, I'll just start with you. You know, it was hard for us to imagine that there would be an Alexa just a few years ago, and maybe wanted to ask your opinion. Where do you see AI as affecting us in 5 years from now?
I think Alexandra talked about sort of the impact of AI in healthcare, and so I'd like to talk about that briefly. I think we actually have made an investment in a company in Israel recently in the healthcare space, and they're targeting sort of food as medicine. And again, something that we talked about. Everyone knows the impact of food in their body and the impact it has. The ability to do what I think of as mass customization, right? Being able to personalize what's important for a certain person. I think that was kind of talked about a lot, but when it comes to healthcare, but I think the possibility of that goes up tremendously in the future with AI, specifically around healthcare. So that's an interesting area that I think can impact everyone. And, so where care is personalized to us from all aspects, from drug dosages to the food we consume and so on. I think that'll be interesting sort of time.
Yeah, I think that is interesting. Actually read a study today, I'm sure you might have seen it, about the increase in COVID-19 cases right around birthdays, where people celebrate birthdays at home, in restaurants, or at parties, and suddenly they were able to analyze that those are actually personal events that have caused a lot of infections. So yeah, it's affecting our lives. How about you, Sherry? Could you give us a little bit of your view in the future? But please unmute.
Yeah, so I think definitely if we think about kind of the future, of how we live, and I guess kind of going back to the energy side of it, I can definitely imagine a future that we have an application, kind of like a smart agent, that really just can guide us through, hey, what type of consumption, what type of how when should be the best time to charge our EV when we all get EV, and also a smart agent that will help us with getting the right time to charge our batteries, and then automatically control all of the appliances in our house, of course with the preference that we can set up for certain times and certain comfort levels. So that's just one example that I am actually personally really excited for.
Great, thank you. And Jonathan, how about you? One last view in the future, but unmute, please.
I was going to do something separate. Sherry, drop me a note. I'll send you a solution that will do that today. I think for future, for me, I think using a combination of AI to design materials is underdeveloped, right? So how especially in things like ceramics, battery materials, when you can look at the output of the data and then use AI to predict what is the optimal atomic combination of elements that are going to enhance the battery performance, for example, right? You can make not just incremental percentage gains, but massive strides in that from what it is. And I've yet to see it really applied in anger at that.
Yeah, we can definitely use that. Okay, Ludmila, do you have anything you wanted to give your view on the future?
Yeah, actually, I have in mind a real great maybe idea or whatever. So actually, I think that's the great opportunity for the artificial intelligence is this social media and internet security. When you upload a lot of data, upload photos, videos, you need to be secured with your data. And this is the challenge for the developers to come up with such solutions which will help you to be secure in the internet when any company cannot use your data. However, you would like to have this social media life, however, be safe with your data. So it's the first thing which I would like to mention. And the second thing and the opportunity for the future of the AI is some, some models which can help us judge as the person, as the real person. Because, for example, just simple example. So we have some summarization, text summarization models. However, they are really simple. They cannot find the hidden meaning, the moral, for example, of some text and for some story narrative. And I think that is the future challenge for all of the developers.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I hope that we can secure the social networks a lot sooner than the future, like now. Alexandra, how about you? Our last comment on where you see the future?
Well, I think that definitely it's a matter of big data massives, and I really think that that's about gathering everything together, because so much data in the world, and then applying this as the new tool, even if we're talking about not only about healthcare, more about more simple domains and spheres of life as well. So it can be really applied further for all the types of projects to manage.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, members of the audience, for joining us today, and wish you all a good day or a good evening wherever you are. And for Jonathan, good luck tonight with the UK, and good luck getting home and keeping the streets clean. So thank you very much, and we will be happy to be in touch with you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.